We're honored to have Congresswoman Judy Chu to speak to us and kick off the new year today. APA Justice was formed in 2015 in response to her call to create a platform to connect CAPAC elected officials with concerned organizations and individuals to address racial profiling and related fairness and justice issues for the Asian Pacific American communities. Congressman Judy Chu represents California's 28th Congressional District. She has been a congressional member since 2009 and chair of CAPAC since 2011. She'll give us her review of 2023 and a look ahead in 2024. Let me at this point welcome Congresswoman Judy Chu to start today's meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me here today to kick off this new year with you. I tell you, it's so great to be here speaking to all of you because it was back in 2015 when we were hearing reports of racial bias and profiling of Asian Americans, often specifically Chinese scientists, researchers, and engineers. I put out a call to the community to mobilize and organize around this issue as the chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, or what we call CAPAC. And I'm proud to see the result of that call for community support is indeed the APA Justice Task Force. There has never been a more important time for you to be in existence. When this community began to form in 2015, back when Sherry Chen and Dr. Xiao Shangqi's cases became public, we never knew how large of a problem targeting our communities would become and what new struggles we would face. But thanks to your leadership, the Asian American scientific and academic community's voices are louder than ever before. And more people are aware of the blatant racial profiling that our communities have faced at the hands of our own government. I want to thank each of you for your engagement on such important issues like this, because together we have accomplished some major wins in the last year. So today it is my honor to join you and share what we have been able to do thanks to your dedicated advocacy and to the work of APA Justice's leaders, including Jeremy Wu, Stephen Pei, and Vincent Wang. One of the most pressing issues last year was the surge in legislation seeking to restrict land ownership for Chinese and other immigrant communities across various states and in Congress. When APA Justice, AAPI advocates, and CAPAC members, Representatives Lizzie Fletcher and Al Green, brought attention to such a bill in Texas early last year, I was immediately alarmed. Texas Senate Bill 147 would ban citizens and companies from China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia from buying land in Texas. But because of Texas State Representative Jean Wu and so many AAPI groups and activists working tirelessly on the ground in Texas to speak out against this legislation, this bill did not move forward into law. But in other states like Alabama, Louisiana, and Florida, these types of bills were signed into law. Already, realtors have reported experiencing business losses and feeling compelled to comply with the new alien land laws in unrealistic, uncomfortable ways, forcing them to act like proxy ICE agents and question people's nationalities. And families are being hurt. Longtime Florida resident Kristen Zhang was thrilled when, after being separated during the pandemic, her parents decided to buy a home in Florida. Those plans have been canceled simply because her parents are from China. Or how about Mr. Zhiming Zhu, a political asylee living in Florida who was persecuted by the Chinese government and had to flee to the U.S., where he's lived for the past 4 years. Because of the new Florida land law, Mr. Zhu was forced to cancel the contract for the purchase of what was supposed to be his new home. And as a result, he lost both his property and his $30,000 deposit. And in Florida, Chinese nationals who own property are now required to register their properties with the state. In fact, Last month, I joined AAPI advocates in Miami, Florida, to speak out strongly and loudly against these discriminatory and racist attacks, which certainly do nothing to help in national security. This is why I recently joined Congressmember Al Green to introduce a bill, the Preemption of Real Property Discrimination Act, prohibiting such state laws from taking effect. We have to do everything we can to push this bill forward. Now, at the federal level, we've seen these measures introduced and attached to legislative vehicles. When the Senate considered the National Defense Authorization Act, such an amendment had passed. Immediately afterwards, CAPAC and a coalition of AANHPI organizations, including many of you on this call, reached out to congressional leadership and committees to express our grave concerns and demand that it be kept out of the final text. I am thrilled to share that with your help, we successfully pushed to remove the harmful language from the final version of the National Defense Authorization Act, which the president ultimately signed. Not only that, we also worked to strike provisions that parroted xenophobic COVID-19 conspiracy theories. And we successfully pushed back measures that would harm the Asian American research community and hinder international collaboration and U.S. innovation, such as a House provision that would have established problematic disclosure requirements for university researchers to have, including their personal information, their date of birth, immigration status, and that all this be published publicly online. So as we continue this work to protect the civil rights of our community, we must also ensure that our community's resilient history is recognized, celebrated, and preserved. In 2010, just after I was elected to Congress, Chinese American community organizations began reaching out to me about ways we could work to promote equality and justice. Many advocates started with addressing the history of the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. This act is among the most discriminatory laws ever passed by Congress. It remains the only law to name an ethnic group for exclusion from immigration and prohibited Chinese Americans from becoming naturalized citizens so that they could not vote. It required Chinese people to carry papers on them at all times or else be subject to deportation, and only the testimony of a white person could save them. This law deprived the Chinese community of their civil rights for 60 years, yet the U.S. had never apologized for it. So for 2 years, together we worked to build support for a formal apology, including educating many of my colleagues in Congress, most of whom had never even heard of this law. And finally, in 2011 and 2012, the U.S. Senate and then the House unanimously passed my bill, officially expressing regret for the Chinese Exclusion Act. Last month, I introduced the official congressional resolution to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the repeal of the Chinese Exclusion Act. As the first Chinese American woman ever elected to Congress, it's critical that I use my seat at that table to ensure that our history is remembered and that nothing like this could ever happen to our communities again. In closing, I want to underscore how important groups like APA Justice are in making all of these major achievements happen over the past year. In the year ahead, we know the work continues to proactively engage with our partners in the administration, across federal agencies, and my fellow members of Congress, and to ensure that our communities are not facing anti-Asian discrimination and racial profiling. To that end, CAPAC will continue to prioritize calling out blatantly xenophobic, anti-China rhetoric, pushing back on policies that unfairly target Chinese American and other AANHPI communities, and advocating for common sense measures that would address racial discrimination and profiling, like FISA Section 702 reform that will stop this warrantless surveillance that's been going on since 9/11. So thank you again for inviting me today to join your monthly call. I appreciate the leadership this group has taken when the need arose for our community to mobilize years ago, And while it's unfortunate that those needs have continued to grow, I'm so grateful to know that a group like APA Justice Task Force is leading the way in bringing our community and our allies together to stand up for our civil rights. I appreciate your inclusion of KPAC in your monthly calls and your long-standing partnership with us. I am thrilled to start this year by congratulating you all on the hard work that you have done on behalf of our community. I encourage you to stay strong on the road ahead as we work together this year, speaking out for those being targeted just for being Chinese or Asian American, and continue building this diverse coalition of leaders across the country. I look forward to working with you to make this nation more inclusive of all people, where no one should be made to feel unsafe or un-American because of who they are. And I will continue to strive for an America where everybody is treated equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Chu. Thank you very much for your review of 2023 and inspiring remarks for the new year, and your continuing public service for not just the Asian American community, but all Americans in the country. We look forward to working closely with you, Nisha, Casey, and more recently, Amy, and KPAC to both celebrate our successes as well as to meet the challenges in the new year. Month to month, Nisha and Casey are doing a great job keeping the communities informed and involved. So I hope you can stay as long as you can for the rest of the meeting.